Okay, so today we're diving into something that's really shaking up app development.
Uh-huh.
We're talking about React Native.
Right.
Imagine building like a seriously awesome mobile app that works perfectly on both iPhones and Androids, all without the pain of coding everything twice.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea behind React Native. And today we're going to dig deep into why it's causing such a stir, even for those of us who wouldn't know a line of code from a line of laundry.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, isn't it?
It really is.
What's really interesting to me about React Native is like how it's changing the game for businesses and developers alike.
Right. So before we get into all of that, can you just give us like the elevator pitch?
Yeah.
What exactly is React Native?
So at its core, React Native is a framework.
Okay.
It was developed by Facebook, now Meta, of course.
Right.
And it basically lets developers use JavaScript to build apps for both iOS and Android from a single code base.
Okay.
But the really cool part is that it uses native components under the hood.
Okay.
So even though it's written in a different language, the app ends up feeling and behaving like a true native app on both platforms.
Hold on, single code base?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all about simplifying things, but how does that actually translate to saving time and money in the real world?
It really is all about efficiency, you know?
Right.
Traditionally, you would need separate teams writing separate code for iOS and Android.
Okay.
So that means double the effort, double the time, and double the cost.
Yeah.
With React Native, one team can handle both platforms.
Right.
You're looking at potentially 30 to 50% savings in development time and costs.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah.
Okay, I see how that would be a massive advantage for a company.
Yeah.
But what's in it for developers, aside from, potentially cutting their workload in half?
Well, think about it this way.
Okay.
React Native offers this really neat feature called hot reloading,
Uh-huh.
which essentially gives developers a live preview of their app as they're coding.
Cool.
They can see changes reflected in real time,
Okay.
which makes testing and debugging way faster.
So it's like having a magic mirror that instantly shows you the results of your coding spells.
Pretty much, yeah.
I can see how that would speed things up, for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, how does the performance of a React Native app stack up against a true native app?
Right. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the answer is, it depends.
Okay.
For most apps, React Native gets you close enough to native performance that the average user wouldn't notice the difference.
Okay.
But there are some situations where native development still reigns supreme.
So when would you say sticking with traditional native development makes more sense?
If you're building something that's extremely graphics intensive,
Okay.
like a high-performance game or an app that heavily relies on very specific hardware features,
Gotcha.
like, say, augmented reality,
Uh-huh.
then native development might still be the better choice.
Before we started this deep dive, I was actually picturing React Native being used mostly by smaller companies or startups.
Yeah.
But I've been reading that some pretty big names are using it too, right?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The list is actually pretty impressive.
Okay.
Take Walmart, for example.
Okay.
They completely rebuilt their mobile shopping app using React Native.
Wow.
And if you think about the sheer scale of their operation,
Right.
the number of users they have, that's a pretty big testament to React Native's capabilities.
Yeah, that's a lot of users.
It is.
It's wild to think that the next time I'm browsing for, say, a new pair of noise-canceling headphones so I can tune out the world, I might be using an app built with React Native without even realizing it.
It's very possible.
Wow.
And it's not just retail.
Coinbase.
The cryptocurrency exchange platform, they also adopted React Native for their app.
Uh-huh.
It's a great example of how this technology is finding its way into all sorts of industries.
So it's not just for building shopping apps or games.
Right.
It's being used to handle people's finances, too.
Exactly.
But all this success must come with some growing pains, right?
Sure.
What are some of the challenges developers face when working with React Native?
Well, one challenge is performance limitations, especially when you're dealing with like complex animations or
Yeah.
graphics.
Okay.
Since React Native acts as like a bridge between the JavaScript and those native components,
Right.
you can sometimes run into bottlenecks.
So how do developers get around that? Do they just have to accept that those parts of the app might be a little sluggish?
Not necessarily. There are some clever workarounds.
Okay.
For example, they can use specialized libraries like Reanimated,
Uh-huh.
which are designed to handle those complex animations more smoothly.
Okay.
And in some cases, they might even decide to go fully native
Oh, wow.
for very specific sections of the app that demand that extra level of performance.
Gotcha.
It's all about finding the right balance.
That makes sense. So it's not like an all or nothing situation.
Exactly.
You can pick and choose the best approach for different parts of the app.
Right.
But what about relying on third-party libraries? Isn't that a bit of a risk?
Yeah.
I mean, what happens if a library you're using becomes outdated or the developers just stop supporting it?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
The key is to be selective,
Okay.
choose libraries that have a proven track record and an active community behind them.
Right.
And, it's also a good idea to contribute to open source projects.
Uh-huh.
That way you can help ensure that the libraries you rely on stay healthy and up to date.
It's like a reminder that even in this world of cutting-edge technology, collaboration and community still play a crucial role.
Absolutely.
I like that.
And speaking of potential pitfalls,
Okay.
another thing to consider is app size.
Okay.
React Native apps tend to be larger than their native counterparts,
Really?
which can be a drawback, especially for users with limited storage space.
Why is that? Is it something inherent in like the way React Native works, or is it more about how developers are using it?
It's a bit of both.
Okay.
Part of it is because React Native apps include the JavaScript runtime
Right.
and other necessary libraries,
Okay.
but developers can definitely take steps to optimize the app size.
So what can they do?
Well, they can reduce unused assets,
Okay.
enable something called ProGuard on Android,
Uh-huh.
which helps shrink the code size,
Gotcha.
and they can leverage the Hermes engine, which we touched on earlier.
Okay, so back to Hermes.
Yeah.
You mentioned it makes the app more efficient, but how does it actually like work its magic?
So Hermes is a JavaScript engine specifically designed for React Native.
Okay.
What makes it special is that it's optimized for mobile environments.
Okay.
It's designed to be lightweight and fast,
Uh-huh.
which means apps start up quicker and run more smoothly, especially on lower-end devices.
So it's like a turbocharger for your JavaScript code,
Exactly.
making it zippy and responsive.
Yeah.
I like it.
And speaking of responsiveness,
Yes.
another challenge that comes to mind is debugging.
Okay.
Debugging a React Native app can be a bit trickier than debugging a native app
Right.
because you're essentially dealing with JavaScript running within a native environment.
Okay, so debugging sounds a bit like trying to solve a riddle wrapped in an enigma.
Kind of, yeah.
How do developers even begin to untangle that?
Don't worry, they're not completely in the dark.
Okay.
Thankfully, there are tools specifically designed to make this process a lot smoother.
Like what?
Well, Flipper, for example, provides a whole suite of debugging features tailored for React Native,
Okay.
allowing developers to inspect the app's state,
Uh-huh.
track network requests,
Right.
and pinpoint issues more effectively.
So it's like having a special set of X-ray glasses that let you see what's happening under the hood of your app.
Pretty much.
That's pretty reassuring.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, with all these challenges and workarounds, what does the future hold for React Native?
Right.
Is it just a passing fad, or is it here to stay?
I think it's safe to say that React Native is here to stay.
Okay, good.
It's changing how we think about building mobile apps.
Yeah.
Facebook, or Meta as they're now known, are really invested in its future.
What kinds of investments are they making?
Well, one big thing is the Fabric renderer,
Okay.
which is a total revamp of how React Native is built.
Right.
It's pretty technical, but basically it's all about making apps run even smoother and feel more responsive.
So even faster and smoother apps.
Exactly.
Sign me up.
And we could expect more and more apps to start using the Hermes engine.
Right.
Remember that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So faster startup times, better efficiency, especially on those less powerful devices.
That's good.
But it's not just about performance.
Okay.
We're also going to see better tools for developers,
Okay.
like better support for TypeScript,
Uh-huh.
which is getting super popular for building those really big, complicated apps.
Right.
And maybe even AI-powered tools to help speed up the whole development process.
Wow. So React Native is just going to keep getting more powerful.
Pretty much.
I'm curious, though, as React Native keeps evolving, do you think the line between native and cross-platform development will get even blurrier?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think it's definitely possible.
Okay.
As these cross-platform tools like React Native become more advanced,
Right.
the differences between the two approaches are probably going to shrink.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's exciting to think about.
It really is. But what does all this mean for developers?
Right.
What skills will they need to stay ahead of the game as this technology keeps advancing?
I think being able to adapt and learn new things quickly will be essential.
Okay.
The ability to think critically and solve tough problems
Yeah.
and to work well with others,
Right.
those skills will be in high demand.
So it's not just about mastering one specific language or framework.
No, not at all.
It's about being ready to learn and grow all the time.
Exactly. The world of technology is always changing.
Right.
You got to keep up.
Well, this has been a fantastic look at React Native.
Yeah, it has.
We've learned a lot about what it is, what it can do, and the challenges and opportunities it brings.
For sure.
What's the biggest takeaway for you from all of this?
For me, it's the potential of React Native to make app development accessible to anyone.
Uh-huh.
It's making it easier for companies of all sizes to build high-quality apps and reach more people.
I couldn't agree more. And to our listeners,
Yeah.
we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into React Native.
Yeah,
Even if you're not a coder yourselves, understanding this technology and its impact can really change how you see the apps you use every day.
definitely.
So what piqued your interest during this deep dive?
Right.
What questions do you have, or what new things are you curious about now?
Yeah.
Let us know.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep diving deep and keep those minds curious.